Yeah. And one thing I like to tell people is they think of Al Qaeda in these huts. And so even when I say laboratories, right, they're thinking of like some uneducated Al Qaeda guy in the laboratory. But in these laboratories are Pakistani scientists, Iranian scientists, Russian scientists, North Korean scientists, right? The Al Qaeda has the money and the funds to bring in the expertise. And I just think we get lost in that. And people like, no, they don't have that capability. And we're not thinking ahead of things.
Man arrested for allegedly trying to firebomb the U.S. Embassy office in Israel. A dual U.S.-German citizen, Joseph Neumeyer, was arrested on May 25th at JFK Airport after being deported from Israel for allegedly attempting to firebomb the former U.S. Embassy site in Tel Aviv. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Neumeyer brought a backpack containing 3 Molotov cocktails to the embassy branch office and spat on the guard before fleeing. That's a poor tactical approach. I'm just going to say that's not some Jason Bourne shit right there. He was later found and arrested by Israeli authorities. That's a shock. Social media posts linked him to threats against the U.S., Americans, and former President Trump. He appeared in court on Sunday, is being held without bond. The question is, given everything we know about Neumeyer, the Molotov cocktails, the social media threats, does this case reveal anything about the current state of international intelligence sharing and how well we're monitoring lone wolf actors? Or is this, I mean, honestly, this one brings to me a little bit like crazy people doing crazy shit.
Yeah, because think about it. If you're a halfway decent terrorist, you'd at least go get a good bomb design. I can go get a good bomb design on the internet. You want to do Molotov cocktails.
Probably spitting on the guard too.
Yes. So I mean, it's a loony, but remember, we got a lot of these around the Hamas propaganda, right? Which is then, as you can imagine, hard to monitor because it's like, is this person just someone putting out threats to get attention, or are they a real threat? Obviously, if you say the president, people are going to monitor you, but most of these people putting out threats, saying these anti-Israel comments, nobody's really taking that serious, right? Because you're looking at it as, oh, these are emotional responses. So we have too much noise to really find terrorists or lone wolves. I don't exactly love lone wolves. I mean, yes, you do get the guy once in a while who finds something on the internet and does something, but a lot of times they've reached out to the mothership and have gotten some sort of guidance, right? And I think that's a little more. But I do think this incident is, nobody got this guy ahead of time, so I wouldn't call anything intelligence sharing, right? He messed it up himself because he has no tactics. He probably wasn't really going to successfully hurt anyone because he didn't make a proper bomb. But, you know, that location's been targeted a number of times, right? That used to be the embassy. Then when Trump moved the embassy, it's now kind of like a mission. But last summer, remember, the Houthis sent that drone and it almost hit the building and it killed the person on the ground. And that's when they realized, wow, the Houthis were able to extend the range of an Iranian drone. It was like this big news that nobody thought they had that technology. So it is an interesting location because it is targeted a lot. So it gives you something to start from.
Yeah, the lone wolves are, I mean, the San Bernardino couple, that would be, I think, an example of kind of a lone wolf. I believe they got radicalized purely just over the internet.
Yeah, but his wife, though, she got radicalized, but it was kind of more with core terrorists, and then she radicalized him. So it's a little more, you know, they were still Pakistani with some decent connections, vice, you know, some American who just lived down the street and looked up something on the internet. They had a little more, but you know, that's a horrible situation. I don't know if you know, but like a neighbor saw them creating what they thought were bombs and was like, I don't want to report it. I don't want to be called racist, which is a sad thing. Because there was a see something, say something, and someone could have got ahead of that attack. And unfortunately, I want to say it was like 14 people ended up dying.
Yeah, it was gnarly. I actually hosted one of the officers who, I believe it was the wife he fatally shot. That was a hell of a story that day of how it all played itself out.
And it's hard shoot. I can't imagine having to shoot a woman, right? No matter what, she's a terrorist. Yeah. That's a very big thing you don't really train for. Well, the funny part is, my friend owns some businesses in San Bernardino, and the male attacker was the one who came in and inspected his businesses. So he knew him.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in my experience, in the moment, you're not doing a whole lot of delineation between male and female, but that one does sit with you for whatever reason. Yeah, it's not really baked into the training scenarios. Now, you mentioned the noise of just again around, let's say, Palestine, an issue that people, and, it's colleges are going to be in the news, specifically probably Harvard and Columbia on this one. Do you think that noise could be part of their plan as well? Do you think that they're trying to dial, because that's not a bad strategy, create so much bullshit that you have a hard time separating the wheat from the chaff?
Yeah, we actually have seen Al-Qaeda, at least to support their homeland attack, lead into 3 of these kind of media campaigns. One is around the Palestinian issue. One is around releasing Afia Siddiqui, right? She's Lady Al-Qaeda. She's in prison, I believe, in Texas. And then the last one was really interesting. The last one is around, I don't know if you remember the individual, he was on death row in St. Louis. Al-Qaeda got involved in that campaign to see if they could bring in maybe some BLM supporters to their side. So Al-Qaeda was actually putting out some of the stuff to free him, and nobody really paid attention to that. So they have got involved in some of these social media campaigns. They're getting smarter and wiser, and I think nobody's paying attention to that.
Well, again, I mean, especially at the local level, these local law enforcement trying to deal with what they are being presented with, it becomes so much. It's not a bad tactic. And again, I don't want to give anybody ideas. They're already doing it, so I'm not. I mean, that would allow for a good amount of freedom of movement. You could also sit there and kind of watch your adversary and see how they react to those things as well.
Yeah. And another thing that we have to be concerned about is, Israel was a little different, right? So people in Gaza got involved and really did help the terrorists in a certain way. But in the United States, they can still help the terrorists in different ways that we're not considering. We're seeing this on some of these raids, right, where they go and try to get illegals, and some people are out yelling, run, but they can do simple things like they can block roads so first responders can't there. They can abandon their vehicles, right? So there's other things too. If these terrorists reach out to these larger networks online and get like protesters involved while they're going to do an attack, it's going to be it. So you can't respond to things. And I don't think a lot of that stuff's being considered because people don't think that the terrorists have evolved in that way.
Classic mistake, right? Just underestimating your enemy. I was talking about that in the previous interview today. We want to just sit back and say, oh yeah, we were just fighting people. They're 10 centuries behind and their maximum technology is a saddle on a horse. I'm like, I think we need to be real careful with that.
Yeah. And one thing I like to tell people is they think of Al-Qaeda in these huts. And so even when I say laboratories, right, they're thinking of like some uneducated Al-Qaeda guy in the laboratory. But in these laboratories are Pakistani scientists, Iranian scientists, Russian scientists, North Korean scientists, right? The Al-Qaeda has the money and the funds to bring in the expertise. And I just think we get lost in that. And people like, no, they don't have that capability. And we're not thinking ahead of things.
Well, Sarah, I'm going to go out and buy a shit ton of guns after our conversation today, and maybe an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
never leave my house. No, they're tough topics, but I think you have to continue having these conversations. I'm somebody, I left the tactical world a long time ago, and I try not to, again, I do my best to not be an alarmist, but it's at a point where it's like you're starting to hear the static, and I don't want to repeat. But I don't know if we're going to get people to pay attention until there is one to a certain degree. Like New Orleans, it leads the news for a few days. Mm-hmm. But if that happened in 6 places simultaneously, that's going to have a different end state. And I don't want it to have to be that, but I'm starting to think that that's what it's going to have to take.
Yeah, unfortunately for the majority of people, and I think even for the government to take it serious, it's going to probably be multiple attacks. But the good part is every person now can prepare the best they can, just like it's any other emergency. I mean, we even saw this during the hurricanes this year. I mean, what happened in the Carolinas? If that didn't teach you to be prepared and no one's coming, and, we watch a ton of veterans step up, put on backpacks and climb to those remote parts, right? Those are the people who are going to come and save you. Make those relationships now, link up with them now, because you really are going to need those networks.
Yeah, it takes a village, as they say. Somebody smarter than me said that. I'm repeating it for clarity.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton.